Hi there. In my previous post, I spoke about training for a fight, and a number of people have emailed in and sent questions to support things like that about how best to train for a self-defense fight. Well, basically, all of you, if you're not a sports fighter, then all of your training should be geared around a self-defense situation. So it's not that how would you train for it, it's more a question of you should always be training for it. So all of your training should be geared towards a self-defense situation. Now, obviously there's times where you don't want to train like that and you train for a bit of fun, or you do a little bit of sparring, or you try new things, whatever it may be, of course. But if self-defense is what you're learning your martial art for, then your training should be geared towards that. If you're a sports fighter, obviously it's geared towards your next fight. Now, obviously there's a lot of crossover between those two areas. However, there's certain things that you would never do in a real fight that you would do in a sports fight. And obviously in a real fight, there's no rules, no regulations, no ref, bells, flags, whistles, crowd, blah, 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 right? So your intent is very different in a real fight. And it's that intensity that somehow you need to put into your training, whilst at the same time maintaining the safety of your training partner and of course yourself. So there's certain things that you can't do. You can't bare knuckle smack your training partner in the face as hard as you possibly can just to prove that your self-defense stuff is working. However, you can smack a heavy bag or pads, if you want to use them, as hard as you possibly can to get used to throwing that shot. But with your training partner, you should always be trying to get to the point where you could land that shot. That sounds like somebody on the way to my gym. So it's one of those things where the training regime for a self-defense situation is oftentimes very difficult to achieve, to get the right balance of intensity and safety. Now, I would always advocate safety first and intensity on the bag until you've built up enough trust in yourself and your training partner or partners to the point where you can take that intensity up and know that if anybody does get hurt, it is pure accident. But like I said, safety is paramount. Now, most of us have got a job to go to the next day, things like that, and you can't be turning up at work with busted up lips and broken teeth and black eyes and a squashed up nose, just a bit of training last night. It's not going to look good depending on what sort of job you do, of course. So all of those factors have to be taken into account. But the most important part, really, for a self-defense situation is your mindset, and training your mind to be right for a self-defense situation. Now that changes all the time. On one particular day, in one particular circumstance, at that particular instant in time, you may be a rabid dog and an unbeatable fighter. You could put the same circumstances 20 minutes later and you might be the sort of person who just curls up into a ball and just can't do a thing. And we can all change like that depending on the situation and depending on the time. I recognize that. I've got friends who they can't fight sleep, but we've had instances where there's a group of over there, and there's a few of us over here. We're saying, well, looks like we might have to do something about it. And before you know it, Kenny, bless him, dead now, but he would be already over there attacking them before anybody had decided whether we should be doing it or not. And he was, unable to fight, is the politest way of putting it. But he had that mindset and the heart of a lion, and even though he couldn't fight sleep, he won 90% of everything he was doing. And there's other people that we know who you would absolutely hate the fact that you got to be sparring with them next. And yet when it came to it, you're better off pushing them out the way or hitting them first, because they get in the way when it comes to a situation. So you never really know until you're in it. And when you're in it, you've got to do it. So training for it is there's so much involved, but your physical training, if you're in your martial arts for self-defense, not for sports fighting, then everything should be geared around that explosive power that you need, that explosive drive and nastiness that you need for the few seconds of the fight. Because it's not going to be a 10 3-minute rounder. It's going to be 5 to 10 seconds, if that. Hopefully it's over the first hit you land. That's the ultimate goal. But you've got to learn how to explode in. Now, one of the things that we use is that if you're working on a heavy bag, for example, suddenly somebody shouts go, and you've got to explode, go nuts for 3, 5, 10, whatever seconds it is. Then back down to normal, working it again, then explode again and again. Now, one of the exercises that we say to people will help is that, for example, let's say you can only do 3 seconds of absolute ballistic go for it. Then do your 3 seconds, carry on hitting the bag nice and steady for, let's say, 30 seconds, and then go again and again. Just keep repeating that. And gradually what you'll do is you'll increase that 3 seconds and decrease the rest time. So that in your own mind, you know for a fact that when it starts, you can go absolutely ballistic, throwing everything you've got, bang, 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 everything you've got for 3, 4, 5, 10, 12, whatever it is, seconds. Not only that, you can go again pretty quick, maybe even only a second or 2 later. So once you've built that up in your mind and in your body that you can do it, then that helps to get your mindset right, so that if something does happen, you know without a shadow of a doubt that you can do it. You can absolutely explode into somebody with everything you've got and keep it going. You're not a one-hit wonder. You're not a throw 3 or 4 and all of a sudden you're panting, red face, can't move on the floor, getting your head kicked in. You know that you can go absolutely animalistic crazy for a long time, and then again and again, just in case it's needed. And that is one of the best ways to train for self-defense, if you like, is that all of your training is geared towards it, keeping in mind the safety aspect and that intensity. That's a real key, getting that intensity right. Now, you might only do that for 5 or 10 minutes at the end of a session or the beginning of a session or whenever, but it's one of the things that you should be training. And you sports fighters out there, you should be doing the same thing as well, so that you can explode in a fight. But that intensity training, that sudden explosion of power, speed, aggression and violent intent is what you need to train. And start it on the bag, build it up, and then once you've got complete trust in yourself and your training partner, you can start to do it against somebody actually trying to hit your back. bearing in mind the safety protocols that you should have. Anyway, I hope that helps give a bit more of an idea of what I mean about training for a fight. And keep the questions coming, and I'll keep answering. Thanks a lot.